Welcome back, everybody. It's 6:40 on Daybreak, and from resurgence to flying buys, and it seems like breweries are popping up everywhere across Western New York over the past decade or so.
And while it seems like a new trend, it's also a return to the days where breweries were one of the biggest industries in the Queen City. As we find out in this morning's Unknown Story, before there was even a city of Buffalo, the breweries were going strong.
It's a history that's been brewing for 207 years.
It was huge. I mean, early on, these smaller breweries were also usually in taverns. So they served a dual purpose. It was a place where beer was being made, but it was also a place where beer was being served. It was a brew pub.
A history that actually predates even the village of Buffalo. In 1811, Joseph Webb opened the first known brewery and tavern in Black Rock. Now, the exact location has been lost in time, probably because it was burned to the ground by the British during the War of 1812. But Webb's Brewery was the start of not only an industry, but also a cultural movement.
You know, before there were official government buildings, it's where government affairs took place. Before there were erected churches, it's where church services took place. So they were third spaces, and they were very important for communities.
Community Beer Works president Ethan Cox co-authored a book on the history of brewing in Buffalo.
Buffalo was definitely a premier beer-making town before Prohibition.
And the numbers speak for themselves. 1875 saw the high water mark for the number of breweries at 38, servicing more than 2,500 saloons and 150 hotels. The beer-making business also gave the growing German population a quick economic foothold in their new country.
They grew bigger and bigger breweries. They made more and more beer. They served these beer gardens to a burgeoning German population, and they created a lot of wealth and power.
Many German immigrants grew to power. In the 1840s, Gerhard Lang Brewing Company had one of the largest operations, a 34-acre plot at Best and Jefferson, where the Makowski School stands today. 10 years later, another legendary brewery was opened, what would become William Simon. The facility at Clinton and Emsley put out Simon Pure and Old Abbey Ale until 1972, Buffalo's longest-lasting brewery. Then there was another of the Queen City's most beloved brews, Iroquois, which was originally the Rouse Brewing Company. The bones of the building still stand on Pratt Street off Broadway, and the evidence of the wealth generated can still be seen in this house on Linwood Avenue, built by George Rouse and recently renovated by current owners Cindy and Earl Robinson.
And when you walked in here for the first time, what struck you?
The stained glass. It's just stunning.
This must have been like opening a treasure chest when you walked into this house.
It was a hidden treasure, but it was here.
In fact, relics of that long brewing history are all over Buffalo. Historian Peter Jablonski leads tours of many of them, including this often overlooked landmark on Ellicott Street near the medical campus.
Part of history that you walk by and you never know is there.
Exactly. So everybody looks at this building, they think it's the old Trico building, but within its walls is the old Christian Weigh-In Brewing Company.
You can still make out the outline of the old cold storage building. The Weigh-In Brewery actually covered what's now 2 city blocks, extending all the way back to Main and Tupper, where the Diocese of Buffalo headquarters is today. And just around the corner from that, this newly opened apartment building occupies the former Phoenix Brewery, which was named that after a mishap at brewmeister Albert Ziegel's previous location.
His brewery burned to the ground, and of course they renamed it Phoenix after the mythological character rising from the ashes.
Prohibition put an end to those glory years, but some say Buffalo's brewing industry has risen from the ashes in the past decade with the craft beer movement. But the bones of those early years can still be found if you look hard enough around the Queen City and within the unknown stories of Western New York.
And we have this really cool thing that we're going to be putting on the web. It's an interactive map that was put together by the Buffalo History Museum, and it pinpoints just about every known brewery, malt house, distillery, cidery, going back all the way to 1812 or 1811. And it's got, you can open up the history. I mean, it's really cool.
You showed it to me. There are hundreds of spots on that map. It's really incredible.
Yep. And so next week, every Monday in May, by the way, we're going to be doing a beer-related story for Unknowns. Next week, we take you inside Buffalo's longest operating brewery, William Simon. A lot of old-timers will remember Simon Pure.
Every Monday in May doing a story about beer.
Imagine that.
Lucky you, Pete.
Getting ready for summer.
It's